I've just been thinking about this book I read. It's called The Woman Who Belonged to Stone by A.M Burke, and it's about Irish mythology. Now, I have never been to Ireland, I have only read about Ireland, and once you read about a place, it makes you feel like you already know the place so well. And especially when you're reading mythology with those cultural elements in it, it gives you a deeper insight into the place. And specifically with this book, I mean, the author also mentions that these are superstitions which are still relevant in Ireland today. So, this book, The Woman Who Turned to Stone by A.M Burke, is about forbidden magic. It's about a fractured world. It's a fantasy novel, but still there are elements in it which are drawn from real life, which is what makes it so interesting. Let me tell you what this book is all about. In this land of Iridium, which is a magical world, magic is forbidden. So the king has forbidden all magic, and yet there are, of course, people who are still practicing magic even though it is forbidden. Among those people are our two protagonists, and they're coming to terms with their own lives. And most of the times, you see like these contradiction between like one character and another character and how they're living their lives. But on the other hand, you also see like the interplay of these two characters' lives and how it intersects with each other later on. And they have to deal with like divided loyalties. They have to deal with other aspects of their life that they're dealing with apart from magic. And yet magic is like a huge part of not just their identity and who they are, but also the life that they're living and the premise around which this entire story revolves. There's an historical element to it, there's a supernatural element to it, there's a paranormal element to it, and it just like weaves such an incredible and intricate story that you are immersed in it, fully immersed in it. And this book is created with multiple perspectives, but primarily the perspectives of Rowan, who is the main character, and also Noctis, who's the other main character. These two people don't have much in common. I mean, Rowan is someone who's ambitious. She's a strong female protagonist, which I love, and she practices magic, wields magic despite her father forbidding it. In the same sense, though, her life is about to change because her husband's coming back. On the other hand, when you hear about Noctis's story, so Noctis is somebody who used to be a master of magic, but when the king of the kingdom said that magic is now forbidden, he is struggling to come to terms with this new life in which he's not really allowed to practice magic, but also betrayal by friends, feeling this loneliness for all the people who left him behind, struggling to come to terms with these new people who have just emerged in his life and are making it more confusing and complex. Noctis seems like all of us, basically, struggling to deal with daily life and the problems while trying to make sure that the people who are around us stay with us. Like the identity crisis that he was going through, which I feel like most of us have dealt with at some point in our life, in which like something in our professional life is not going well and we have this entire, crumbling down in which we're like, oh, what are we doing with our life? What am I even good at? And especially like if you're a master of magic and suddenly you find out that magic has been outlawed, what do? Right? You're feeling so self-conscious about, oh, this was the one thing that I was good at, this was the one skill that I dedicated my entire life to, and now we're in a position where I can't use it. What am I supposed to do? So that like inner monologue, that inner churning that he went through was so relatable. Also, when it comes to the other characters, I found Rowan to be quite hilarious. I mean, she had the most interesting monologues and like inner thoughts I have read about. And they were just like some snarky remarks that she was making in her mind, which was like so funny to read about. And in terms of those, I did find the characters quite entertaining. It's an interesting book for sure, I'd suggest that. But there are some elements of it which just made me feel like, oh my god, this is a great, great, great fantasy book. Why hadn't I read it before? That reminds me, the entire theme of forbidden magic and like a strong female character who's like in complex situations versus a strong male character who's also coming to terms with things in his own life reminds me so much of this other book that I'm reading. It's also a fantasy novel. It's called These Woven Kingdoms by Tahera Mafi. And that, I mean, the world building is slightly different because this is Irish mythology and that book has more of like jinns and Arabic mythology, I'd say. But the aspects of it felt so, similar. And Tahira Mafi is one of my favorite authors, so that is saying something, that I felt the reflection of that kind of writing in this book. The writing in this book is so amazing. I could read some quotes from the book and it just makes you feel like, that was so nice. One of them was, I remember that one of the characters just says, "How do you feel?" Just like a normal question, "How do you feel?" And the response is, "Like death brought to life." So good, right? And there's a bit of mystery to this story. It's not like a plain novel which just like goes in a linear way. It has a very complex plot, but it's easy to follow. The writing is so beautiful, so it's even more engaging. It's very fast paced, so it keeps you hooked from start to end. And some of the mystery is about this woman in stone, of course. It's about the ancient ruins, but also Delilah. I will not ruin much of the plot for you, so you can go read it yourself. But I must say that the entire, coming together of forbidden magic, ancient runes, and these complex characters who are struggling with their own lives with this fantasy and adventure kind of atmosphere was really engaging to read. There is this intricate plot that unfolds layer by layer, and slowly as you turn the chapters, you learn more about the story. My favorite thing about it would have to be the prose and the writing, because most of the times when I'm reading fantasy novels, it's easy to get, bored after a while. I mean, even if the plot is engaging, but the writing is not making its mark, it's easy to lose concentration, especially because fantasy novels are really, really long, and you have to do the world building, and everything must be engaging enough for you to keep reading it. So that is one thing I didn't have to struggle with in this book. Another element of it is just the dual perspectives. I mean, there are primarily dual perspectives, but also chapters from other perspectives, so it literally feels like you're living the life of these two main characters and seeing the world through their eyes and experiencing everything that they're experiencing. And it was written so beautifully. The storytelling is incredible, because it really makes you feel like you are living in that circumstance. So whatever is happening with the character, you have like a strong connection to it. There's that relatability factor that comes into play. When it comes to themes of the book, it has multiple themes. There are themes of like sacrifice, loyalty, and courage in tense situations, but also like how you look at yourself and how you look at life, and what does it tell you about the world that we're living in. These are these interplay of these complex themes throughout this novel. One takeaway I would say from finishing this book would be that it ends on a cliffhanger. And the fact that I hated that it ended on a cliffhanger while loving the book says something. Because most of the times, if the book builds up to something and then does not give you that closure, I would end up hating that book. But the book itself was so engaging that despite it ending on a cliffhanger, I was looking forward to the next part. And that explains like the dynamics of it. Like, it's a really engaging book, and I'm looking forward to reading the second part. That's why I had to like recommend it to you. But also be warned that it does end on a cliffhanger. You would want to wait for the second book, yet you would love reading it. I think you would love reading it. If you're somebody like me who likes reading about mythology, epic fantasy, and having like strong characters in play, then yeah, this is definitely a book I would recommend. So I'll add the link to buy this book in the description below, and you can go check it out.